Beyond the political leadership, we also enacted tough laws and enforced them vigorously. The Prevention of Corruption Act had a wide scope which covered both the public and private sectors, which applied to persons who give or receive bribes and everybody in between, and which put the burden of proof on the accused to show how he legally acquired his wealth, so that if he has unexplained wealth disproportionate to his known sources of income, that is considered as corroboration of graft. We've made the CPIB a strictly independent agency, the director appointed by the President, acting in his discretion, and the director, CPIB, reporting to the Prime Minister, but having a second path for approval if the Prime Minister refuses permission for an investigation. Then the director, CPIB, can go to the President and obtain from the President the permission to proceed. Thirdly, we've kept in Singapore money out of politics. In many countries, whether developing or developed, corruption and vote buying pervades politics. Candidates spend large sums on their campaigns and rely heavily on donors for financing. And very often the donors finance both sides to buy insurance. After the election, the candidates, as well as their donors, expect to reap a return on their investments, on what they have spent to get elected. And Singapore, in contrast, has rigorously eschewed money politics. We've capped election spending by candidates by law, so that elected leaders are not beholden to anyone and can do the right thing by voters. Fourthly, we've paid public officers properly, commensurate with their job scope, in line with their private sector earnings. And therefore, we have been able to insist on high standards of integrity and performance and avoided the problems of other countries which pay officers unrealistically low wages, resulting in endemic corruption at all levels. This is how we've kept the system clean, but a clean system is not the natural state of affairs. Corruption ultimately comes from weaknesses of human nature: greed, temptation, the desire to enrich oneself or to obtain business through unfair means. Even with harsh penalties, and certain penalties, there will still be some who will try to break the rules and will be caught and punished from time to time. If the penalties are not rigorously enforced, or if such behavior becomes socially acceptable, then we are headed down a slippery slope. Because ultimately, the price of corruption is not just the dollar amount of the bribes, but the cost to society of the bad decisions and the malfunctioning systems, which far exceeds the money which is exchanged. Therefore, we can never be complacent in the fight against corruption. The figures show that corruption is well under control in Singapore, thanks in large part to the CPIB's relentless and unremitting efforts. The number of complaints and cases registered have steadily decreased over the years, in recent years. The number of cases taken to court have also fallen, and the cases involving the government or involving public officers form only a small proportion of total cases, and these are not increasing either. But unfortunately, in recent months, there have been a spate of cases involving public officers. The cases are not related to one another. Several involve senior officers. Many of them are still being investigated or tried, so I cannot comment on them individually, but I can say that it is bad that some officers have not lived up to the high standards which the civil service and the people of Singapore expect of public servants. I am confident that these lapses are not typical of the public service. The overwhelming majority of officers are upright and trustworthy, and the cases which have come up reflect our determination to clamp down on corruption and wrongdoing, even when it's awkward or embarrassing for the government. Let me be quite clear. we will never tolerate corruption. We will not accept any slackening or lowering of standards. Anyone who breaks the rules will be caught and punished. No cover will be allowed, no matter how senior the officer or how embarrassing it may be. It's far better to suffer the embarrassment and to keep the system clean for the long term than to pretend that nothing has gone wrong and to let the rot spread. We are reviewing and tightening the system in the light of these cases to maintain our high standards of honesty. For example, with stricter procurement rules, reviewing approving authorities, and spending limits. But we have to balance between instituting more safeguards and burdening the system with too many checks. Because ultimately, no system can completely stop a determined cheat. And the part of the solution has to be that if you do it, we will catch you and punish you. But another very important part of the solution has to be that our officers are imbued with the right values. To understand the ethos of public service, to know that you occupy positions of public responsibility and trust and must serve with integrity and propriety. Never let the public down. The civil service will reward you for ability and performance, but also expect and demand of you good character and moral stewardship. The heads of the civil service and the permanent secretaries have all clearly reminded their officers in all the ministries and stat boards of their duties. And we expect no less from every single public officer. But keeping Singapore clean goes beyond the public service. The political leaders have to continue to set high standards of honesty and integrity. The society must continue to reject corruption, not just because of the rules and penalties, but because this reflects the society we want to live in and the values that we uphold and hold ourselves to. Then we can keep Singapore special and a home which we will continue to be proud of. So I congratulate the CPIB on its milestone, and I wish it every success for many years ahead. Thank you very much.